In the cold shell of what was once downtown Providence, Rhode Island, a voice broke through the static. For months, the emergency radio tower atop the old city hall had been silent, save for the occasional hiss of dead air. But on this night, at precisely 2:17 a.m., the static cracked, and a woman's voice, weak but unmistakably real, whispered through. "This is Isla. I'm alive. Please, if anyone hears me. I'm trapped at Mercy Hill Children's Hospital. They're outside. I don't know how much longer I can." The message ended in a burst of static. Mason Clark blinked in disbelief. Seated in the watchtower of Outpost Echo, a fortified survivor compound set up in the remnants of an abandoned ski lodge, he had spent every night for nearly a year scanning old emergency frequencies. They hadn't picked up anything but rogue weather signals and interference in months. But now? A clear human voice? He ripped off his headset and rushed downstairs to the common room. The fire had long since dwindled to embers. A few survivors sat around it, dozing lightly with weapons nearby. Mason's boots echoed through the wooden floor as he burst in. "Wake up! Everyone up now," he shouted. The first to respond was Ray, the group's de facto leader and a former paramedic with a soldier's instincts. She was alert in seconds, shotgun in hand, eyes narrowed. "What is it?" "I caught a signal. A woman. She's trapped in the Mercy Hill Hospital." The room fell silent. For a moment, it seemed even the wind outside had stopped. Mercy Hill was 20 miles northeast. Deep inside the red zone. "You're sure?" Ray asked slowly. "I heard her. She said her name was Isla. She's barricaded in the hospital and surrounded. I think she's been holding out alone. She's scared." A heavy silence fell. A young man named Ty, who had lost his brother on a failed scavenger run just 2 weeks prior, spat into the fire. "It's a trap. No one's alive out there anymore. Not for that long." "Maybe," Ray said, thoughtful. "But maybe not." Another voice crackled from the shadows. It belonged to Dell, the group's quietest member and their best scout. "It doesn't make sense. That hospital's been off our maps since the beginning. It was in the first major infection cluster." "But what if she's real?" Mason asked. "Think about it. Someone surviving that long, without supplies, without backup, it means she's smart. Resourceful. If she's alive, she's worth saving." Ray stood and grabbed her coat. "We leave at dawn." By sunrise, a team had formed. Mason, Ray, Dell, and 2 others, Finn, a tough ex-firefighter, and Zeke, a tech-savvy teenager who knew how to operate old communication equipment. 5 of them, moving fast and light. No room for anyone without field experience. The sun rose weakly over a blood-orange sky. As they moved north, the terrain changed quickly. Houses stripped bare, roads warped with old fires, and husks of cars used as makeshift barricades. The further they went, the quieter it became. Nature had reclaimed some spaces, but it was a silence born not of peace, but of absence. They avoided the open highways, sticking to back alleys and forest trails. Twice, they passed signs of movement, dragged footprints, overturned trash bins, a distant scream muffled by wind. But they saw no people. No infected. Not yet. 3 hours in, they reached the edge of the red zone. A rusted sign, half buried in ivy, marked the boundary. Restricted, no entry, quarantine enforced. Zeke adjusted his pack nervously. "We're really doing this?" Mason nodded grimly. "We're already in it." The group continued on foot. They were less than 5 miles from the hospital when they came upon the remnants of a failed convoy, burned-out military trucks, bodies still strapped in the passenger seats, their bones blackened and brittle. A grim reminder of what had happened here. Dell crouched beside a corpse, lifting a tattered patch from the man's arm. "National Guard," he murmured. This must have been one of the evacuation efforts. "Or an extermination run," Finn said bitterly. "To clean up the ones they couldn't cure." Ray silenced them with a gesture. Save it. We're close. The team picked up the pace, tension rising with every step. The buildings grew taller, more skeletal, their windows broken and their walls charred. The smell hit them before the hospital came into view, a foul mixture of rot, mildew, and dried blood. Mercy Hill loomed like a corpse against the skyline. A children's hospital, once painted in soft blues and cheerful murals, now stood desecrated. Windows boarded. Front gates torn down. Graffiti marked its sides, warnings, prayers, curses. Zeke adjusted the frequency on his portable receiver. I'm getting something. The static returned. Then. Please, someone. Isla. She was real. Ray raised her rifle. Positions. We go in quiet. No mistakes. And from within the dark, empty building, something growled. Let me know when you're ready for part 2, and I'll continue with the next 795 words of suspenseful action. You said. The main lobby of Mercy Hill Children's Hospital was a tomb. The automatic glass doors had long since shattered, leaving jagged teeth in the frame. The floor was coated in layers of dust, dried blood, and crumpled medical forms. Stuffed animals lay like casualties, limbless, eyeless, forgotten. The team moved in silence, weapons drawn, footsteps muffled by the debris. Zeke adjusted the receiver strap to his chest. Her signal's still strong. It's coming from the upper floors. North wing. Keep that thing low, Ray whispered. If she can send, others can listen. They moved in formation, with Dell sweeping corners ahead and Finn guarding the rear. The air inside was thick with decay and something more subtle, something old and chemical, like the residue of long-abandoned desperation. Ray tapped Mason on the shoulder. You said she sounded scared. Was it fresh fear? Or someone who's lived with it too long? Mason glanced around, his hand tightening on his rifle. Both. As they passed a waiting room, Zeke paused. There were drag marks on the floor. Deep gouges in the linoleum. And smeared handprints on the walls, tiny ones. Kids, he murmured. Some of them tried to hide here. Finn gave him a nudge. Don't dwell. Focus. The team pressed on. They ascended a stairwell littered with broken force stands and collapsed gurneys. One of the flights was half barricaded with hospital beds. As they climbed over, Mason noticed something odd. Someone had reinforced this barrier recently. Sheets had been tied into makeshift ropes. The beds had been stacked, not dropped. She's been moving around, he said. She's not just hiding. Ray nodded. Means she's smart. And still alive. The higher they climbed, the colder it got. On the 5th floor landing, Dell raised a fist, signal to freeze. The others crouched, weapons raised. He pointed down the hall. There, slumped in front of a broken vending machine, was a figure. A human, barely. Its skin was mottled and bruised, patches of rot seeping through torn hospital scrubs. It sat perfectly still, head tilted as though listening. Not quite feral. Not quite dead. A sleeper. Don't make a sound, Ray mouthed. Sleepers were unpredictable. Quiet and less disturbed. Then they snapped, faster and stronger than the mindless swarms. Triggering one often meant triggering a dozen more nearby. The team crept past. Finn, bringing up the rear, accidentally brushed a plastic cup. It rolled. It clattered. The sleeper's head snapped up. Its eyes, milky, glassy, locked onto the sound. Then it shrieked. In seconds, chaos erupted. From side rooms and hallways, other figures burst forth, limping, snarling, teeth gnashing. The team fired only when absolutely necessary. Ray took down one with a knife to the temple. Mason shoved another over a broken gurney. Zeke nearly slipped on blood as he scrambled to reload. Stairs, now! Ray barked. They burst into the next stairwell, slamming the fire door behind them. Dell shoved a metal rod through the handle to jam it shut. The infected slammed into it seconds later, shrieking and scratching. "Everyone good?" Ray asked, panting. No one answered immediately. Zeke was pale but nodded. Finn had a gash across his arm but gave a thumbs up. They kept moving. 2 more floors up. Finally, they reached the pediatric intensive care unit. A flickering sign hung above a cracked doorway, "NICU authorized personnel only." "This is it," Zeke said. "Signal's strongest here." Mason moved first, stepping into the hallway with his weapon raised. He froze. It was clean. Unlike the chaos below, this hallway had been swept. The doors had been resecured. There were candles melted into empty soup cans, arranged to give light without smoke. Children's murals had been altered with paint, redone to show directions, symbols, warnings. "She's here," he whispered. A voice came from the far end of the hall, hoarse and cautious. "Don't come any closer unless you're human." Ray slowly raised her hands. "We are." "Mason heard your broadcast." "Isla." There was silence. Then a door creaked open. A woman stepped into view, rifle in hand. Her face was gaunt, eyes sharp with weeks of sleepless vigilance. She was no older than 30, with a deep gash across her temple and a child's medical badge clipped to her collar. "Which one of you is Mason?" she asked. He stepped forward. "You actually came," Isla said, voice trembling. And then she collapsed. They rushed to catch her, easing her into one of the cleaner rooms. Zeke checked her vitals. Exhaustion. Malnutrition. But she's stable. Isla stirred. "There's more, you don't understand." "I wasn't alone." "Others?" Mason asked. She shook her head. "One other. A little girl. I sent her out 2 days ago to find insulin from the lower levels. She hasn't come back." The room fell cold. Dell muttered, "That means a kid is still down there, in that." Isla looked up, eyes pleading. "Please. Her name's May. She's only 10. Ray stood, her jaw tightening. "We came for a rescue mission. It just got bigger. And far more dangerous. Let me know when you're ready for part 3. And I'll continue with the next 795 words of tension and suspense." The girl's name hung in the stale hospital air like a fragile thread. May. Only 10. Still down there. Mason stood at the door of the room where Isla now rested, watching her shallow breaths as she lay wrapped in a tattered thermal blanket. He couldn't shake the urgency in her voice, the desperation. Ray stood behind him, arms crossed, silent. "We can't leave a kid down there," he said. Ray exhaled slowly. "I know. But if she's in the lower levels, she's beyond the quarantine line. The infected down there haven't seen daylight in months." "They're worse?" Dell answered from the hallway, where he'd been examining old security maps. "More aggressive. No light means no circadian rhythm. They don't rest like the others. They've adapted, permanently agitated, drawn to heat and vibration." Mason stepped into the hallway. "And she's still just a kid, out there trying to find insulin for someone else." Dell didn't look up. "If she's alive, she's hiding. If not." "She is," Mason cut in. Isla said she is. "That's enough for me." Ray gave a reluctant nod. "All right. We go. But we do it by the numbers." The elevator shaft was out of the question, jammed and rusted shut, with cables snapped like old wire. Instead, they descended through an old service stairwell, behind the kitchen wing. As they moved downward, the walls grew darker, mold-covered, the tiles cracked and peeling. On the 3rd basement level, the light was almost non-existent. Zeke flicked on an old thermal scanner. "Still working, sort of. I'll scan for movement, but I can't guarantee it's human." Mason clicked on his flashlight. The beam revealed narrow hallways and overturned medicine carts. The stench was unbearable, stale air, decay, chemical rot. Here, the infection had lived longest. Dell pointed ahead. Storage and pharmacy should be in that direction. If she came down here for insulin, it's where she'd go. Finn grumbled from the back. Let's just hope the infected haven't made it their nest. They moved carefully, flashlights scanning every doorway. Bloody footprints trailed through dust, small ones. Too small to be an adult. Zeke held up the scanner. Heat spike. Ahead. Something's moving. The team froze. Silence. Then, a scraping sound. Like nails on tile. Dell raised his rifle. Something's crawling. From the corner of the corridor, a shape emerged, not walking, but dragging itself. Its arms were elongated from muscle rot, fingers twisted into claws. It had no eyes. Just a rotted face and a mouth that opened too wide, too fast. It shrieked. 3 more appeared behind it, skittering on all fours like insects. Contact! Ray shouted. Gunfire echoed through the corridor. Dell fired 2 clean shots, dropping the first. Mason and Finn opened fire at the others. Zeke ducked behind a supply cart, scanning for more. The infected moved fast, erratic, unpredictable. One managed to leap onto Finn, screeching with rage, before Ray blasted it off with her shotgun. When the hallway fell silent, Mason's chest heaved. The creatures weren't just undead. They were evolving. These things didn't exist above ground, he muttered. They've adapted to the dark, Dell replied. And they're getting faster. Zeke lifted the scanner again. Still a reading. Ahead, left corridor. Could be her. The team moved cautiously. The corridor opened into a shattered pediatric wing, floor covered in old medical files and rusted 4 poles. At the far end, a small light blinked. A flashlight. They sprinted toward it, and behind a toppled cabinet, they found her. May. She was curled into a ball, holding a scalpel in one trembling hand, the other gripping a worn-out stuffed rabbit. Her face was pale, smudged with dust, but alive. She blinked at the lights and let out a faint gasp. Mason knelt beside her. May? We're here to get you out. Isla sent us. Her lips trembled. Isla's okay? She's safe. We found her. May collapsed into his arms, tears silent, the kind of sobs that came after days of holding it all in. We need to move, Ray said urgently. This place is going to wake up. Zeke pointed at the scanner again. Movement. Fast. Multiple. Finn lifted May onto his back. Let's go. Now. They sprinted back the way they came, but the infected had regrouped. Howls echoed behind them, ahead of them. They were surrounded. Dell spotted an emergency exit door chained shut. There. He shot the padlock. The door burst open, revealing a long, flooded service tunnel. No choice. They plunged into it, the water up to their knees, filthy and freezing. As they ran, shadows followed. Dozens of shrieks. Claws scraping the walls. May whispered, "They don't like the light." Mason looked at her. What? She reached into her coat and pulled out a small flare, half-used, barely functional. Use it, she said. Now. Ray lit the flare and hurled it behind them. The infected screamed in agony as the red light blazed through the tunnel. Some scattered. Others fled. The team emerged from the tunnel into the lower ambulance bay, open to the sky. They slammed the emergency shutter closed. Safe. For now. May was crying again, but this time in relief. And for the first time, Mason allowed himself to believe. They might actually survive this. By the time they returned to the 5th floor, the flare's glow was gone, the screams had faded, and the sun outside was sinking into an orange haze. Isla sat up as the group stumbled into the pediatric unit, her eyes locking on May. May, she cried. The girl slipped from Finn's arms and ran to her. Isla pulled her close, wrapping her in a fragile embrace, tears flowing freely. Everyone fell silent, exhausted, shaken, but for the moment, victorious. You're okay, Isla whispered, clutching the child like a lifeline. May looked up, smiling weakly. Told you I could find the insulin. Isla laughed through the tears, brushing May's filthy hair back. But her eyes drifted to the others, scarred, blood-smeared, silent. Ray leaned against a wall, inspecting her weapon. We need to move before nightfall. Mason looked out a narrow window. The infected didn't vanish with the dark. They thrived in it. We can't go back through the tunnel, Dell said. Too many routes in and out. They'll be waiting. Finn paced. Main Street's suicide. Every open path is a trap. What about the roof? Zeke asked, still gripping his receiver. Signal tower's up there. Maybe we can get a stronger transmission out, call Outpost Echo for evac. They'd never risk a chopper run this deep, Ray replied. Maybe not, Zeke said, but if we can get the beacon frequency online, they might send a ground team halfway. Dell raised an eyebrow. If we survive long enough for them to answer. Mason turned to Isla. Is the roof secure? She nodded. Partially. I reinforced it 2 months ago when I was running out of food. Thought I might have to climb down the side or jump. He looked at her. You've been fighting them this long, alone? Her eyes were distant. No one else came. Until you. Ray stood. We're not staying. Not another night. We go up, set the beacon, and move fast. Dell, Zeke, scout the stairwell. Dell and Zeke headed for the door, rifles up. The rest readied weapons, checked ammo, bandaged wounds. Finn passed around canteens. May nibbled on a protein bar, still huddled beside Isla. When Dell and Zeke returned, they were pale. Stairwell's blocked, Dell said. Collapsed ceiling. Someone blew part of it, maybe to slow down the infected. No going up that way. Zeke scratched his head. There's an exterior fire ladder, if we can reach the supply wing windows. But it's exposed. If they see us, we'll deal with it, Ray said. We don't have time for perfect. The supply wing was 2 floors down. A narrow hallway connected the pediatric unit to it, but the last 15 feet were burned out, a collapsed ceiling, scorched tiles, and a gaping hole where the floor used to be. Mason peered through the blackened doorway. Jumps too far, he muttered. We need a bridge. Finn yanked a gurney from the corridor, snapping off the wheels and flipping it on its side. He and Dell dragged it across the hall, laying it over the gap. It creaked but held. Ray crossed first, then May, Isla, Zeke. Mason helped Finn last. The moment they touched down, the distant howls began. They know, Isla said quietly. Doesn't matter, Ray said. We keep moving. The window to the fire ladder had been barricaded with steel mesh. Mason pried it open with a crowbar, straining until it snapped. The ladder beyond creaked in the wind, dangling 4 stories above cracked asphalt. Zeke climbed through first, then May, then Isla. One by one they descended, weapons slung. Mason went last, pausing to scan the skyline. Far in the distance, on the opposite rooftop, shapes moved. Too fast for humans. Go, he shouted. They touched down in the alley, sticking close to the walls. Zeke checked his scanner. Signals up. Transmitter's strong. If I can hook it into that old emergency post by the ER entrance, I might boost it. Do it, Ray said. Quick. Zeke sprinted across the open lot toward the ruined emergency station. Mason, Ray, and Finn followed, weapons ready. Dell stayed behind, guarding Isla and May. Suddenly, the scanner flared red. Mason turned. Too late. A blur dropped from the rooftop. It hit Finn first, ripping into his shoulder with elongated fingers. He screamed, firing wildly. Another creature vaulted over the fence, then 2 more, shrieking. Back! Ray shouted. Regroup. Zeke dove behind a rusted ambulance, hooking the wires into the transmitter. I need 20 seconds. Make it 10. Mason roared, firing into the shadows. One infected lunged. Ray met it midair, blasting it with both barrels. Blood sprayed the ground. Del dragged Isla and May toward cover, tossing a flare behind them. Zeke shouted, signals broadcasting. From the beacon, a green light blinked to life. Hope. Faint, but real. The creatures howled and backed away from the light. The sound was piercing, unnatural. As if the frequency itself hurt them. They fled. And for a breathless moment, the world went still. Zeke fell back, panting. It's out there. Echo will hear us. Ray didn't respond. She knelt beside Finn, who lay motionless. His skin was already graying. His eyes, shifting. Mason swallowed hard. The infection was in his blood. And time was running out. Finn's breathing was ragged. He lay on the cold asphalt behind the rusted ambulance, sweat beading across his forehead. His arm trembled violently, fingers twitching as if each nerve had turned against him. The gash across his shoulder pulsed with an angry red glow. The infection was already coursing through him. No, he muttered. Not like this. Mason knelt beside him, gripping his hand. Stay with me. Finn's voice was low, bitter. I'm not scared of dying, Mason. I'm scared of waking up, wrong. Ray crouched nearby, reloading her weapon. We have antibiotics. We can slow it down. Del shook his head grimly. That wasn't a bite. That was an injection. One of the new ones, those things spike people. It's faster. Crueler. Zeke knelt by the signal tower, his voice tense. Broadcasts clean. Outpost Echo received it. They're on their way, but it'll take at least 40 minutes to reach extraction point Bravo. Mason looked up. We can't move Finn. He won't make it. Then we hold, Ray said firmly. We don't leave anyone behind. Finn coughed, trying to sit up. If I lose control, you shoot me. No hesitation. Don't say that, Isla whispered, clutching May. Ray met Finn's gaze. If it comes to that. I will. But not until we're sure. The group moved fast, securing the ER parking lot. Barricades were rebuilt using collapsed light poles and flipped vehicles. Zeke repurposed old oxygen tanks and wiring to craft crude explosives, placing them at choke points. Del climbed onto the ambulance and set up a watch, sniper rifle in hand. The sun dipped below the horizon. And the screams began again. The first wave came from the east, 5 infected, sprinting full tilt, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Mason, Ray, and Del dropped them before they reached the lot. The second wave came 10 minutes later. This time, there were dozens. They struck like a storm, hurling themselves over barricades, screeching with fury. One slammed into a parked truck and shattered its spine against the hood, still dragging itself forward. May screamed, clinging to Isla. Zeke shoved them behind the signal tower, shielding them with his body. Mason fired until his rifle clicked empty, then drew his pistol. Ray swung a crowbar at anything that got too close. Del dropped targets from above with lethal precision. Blood sprayed. Limbs flew. But still they came. Then, from the shadows, a new figure emerged. Taller. Leaner. Unlike the others, it watched. It moved with control, purpose. Eyes black as tar. Clawed hands slick with fresh blood. It didn't rush. It waited. Ray froze mid-swing. That's a variant. Mason cursed under his breath. The kind that thinks. Del tried to snipe it, but it moved like smoke, sliding into the shadows, reappearing behind a van, then vanishing again. They're adapting, Isla whispered. Even more than I thought. Suddenly, a scream cut through the night. Zeke! He dropped to his knees beside the tower, clutching his side. The variant had appeared behind him, silent, fast, and struck. Ray opened fire, but the creature darted back into the dark. Zeke was bleeding, but alive. Still broadcasting, he groaned. Signals holding. Del fired another round. We've got movement near the west exit. A lot of it. Mason ran to Finn. How you holding up? Finn looked up, his eyes glassy. He didn't answer. Ray knelt beside him and checked his pulse. Too fast. Too shallow. She looked at Mason, and her voice cracked. He's slipping. Finn opened his mouth as if to speak, but then he seized. His body jerked violently. May screamed. Isla covered her mouth. No, Mason whispered, grabbing his friend. Stay with me, Finn. Come on. But the change had begun. Finn's pupils dilated into inky voids. His teeth clenched unnaturally. A low growl rumbled in his throat, one that didn't belong to a human anymore. Mason drew his pistol, hands trembling. Don't make me do this. Del shouted from above, they're coming, third wave, heavy. Ray gritted her teeth. No time. She took the shot. Finn's body fell still. Mason looked away, his hands shaking. Zeke limped over, blood trailing behind him. We have to go. We can't hold this spot another 30 minutes. Ray nodded. Extraction point Bravo. How far? South corridor, Zeke said. 3 blocks. We move fast, we make it. Isla held May close. You're sure they'll be there? They heard us, Ray said. They'll be waiting. Del climbed down from the ambulance. I rigged the tower to blow. Once we're out, it'll take half this parking lot with it. They gathered quickly. No time to mourn. No time to breathe. Just to run. Mason took one last look at Finn's body, then turned away. The group slipped through the back alley, vanishing into the shadows, even as the infected closed in. Behind them, the beacon tower blinked its final message. We are alive. Then it exploded in fire and steel. The blast lit the night like a sunrise. The hospital's emergency tower erupted in a bloom of fire and twisted metal, sending debris across the sky. A shockwave rolled through the streets, shattering windows, setting off long-dead alarms, and, most importantly, buying them precious seconds. Mason didn't look back. Keep moving. Ray shouted, leading the group through the alley behind the ER, now thick with ash and smoke. Zeke limped behind them, clutching his bleeding side. Isla had one arm around May, who was barely keeping up, eyes wide and blank with shock. Del covered the rear, scanning every rooftop, every shadow. 3 blocks. Just 3 blocks to extraction point Bravo. But in the dead world, 3 blocks was an eternity. They moved fast, cutting through twisted wreckage and rusted vehicles, the city skyline looming above like the bones of a fallen giant. Fires burned in trash cans. The occasional body, long decomposed, lay slumped against alley walls. The broadcast had been successful. But it had also drawn everything to them. Ray led them through a collapsed storefront into what was once a pharmacy. Glass crunched beneath their boots. Mason helped Zeke over a fallen shelf. We need to slow the bleeding, he said, already tearing fabric from his sleeve. Zeke winced. Forget it. I'll make it. You won't if you collapse in the street. Mason wrapped the wound tight. Zeke nodded in thanks, his face pale but determined. Del peered through a shattered window. We've got movement. 2 packs, southwest and northeast. Looks like they're circling. Mason frowned. They're coordinating. Ray didn't respond. She just clenched her jaw. Then we're running out of time. They exited through a side door, entering the ruins of what used to be a pedestrian plaza. Benches overturned. A carousel long stilled. The wind blew a child's shoe across the cracked pavement. Then, a growl. Low. Guttural. Not human. Everyone froze. From the far end of the plaza, they saw it. The variant. The one that had attacked Zeke. It stood under a collapsed signpost, watching them. Behind it, more infected emerged, limping, crawling, running. All silent. All focused. The beacon had made them angry. "Go," Ray whispered. Quietly. They moved slowly at first. But the moment May stumbled on a loose stone, the infected charged. Ray opened fire, dropping the closest one. Del fired from the rear, picking off 2 more. Mason grabbed May and pulled her into his arms, sprinting. The group tore through the plaza, bullets flying. Isla stayed right on Mason's heels, her eyes wild. Zeke stumbled, nearly fell. Del caught him and hauled him forward. The variant didn't rush. It moved in a circle, watching, calculating. Mason glanced over his shoulder. Too smart. Too fast. Too close. They ducked into a maintenance tunnel beneath an old subway entrance. The moment they entered, Mason turned and slammed the steel door shut, sliding a rusted bar through the handle. Screeches rang out from the other side. The infected slammed against the door, but the thick rusted steel held, for now. Everyone gasped for breath. May clung to Isla. Zeke slid to the ground, coughing blood. Del and Ray checked weapons. Mason took a knee, listening. "Too many," he said. "They're not just chasing. They're hurting us." "Toward something," Ray muttered. "But why?" Zeke looked up. "They've changed. That variant, it's not just smart. It's leading." Mason looked at the blood-streaked walls of the tunnel. "You think it's building a pack?" "No," Zeke said. "A hive." Silence fell. Ray broke it. "Extraction's 1 block west. There's an old overpass we can climb. If we move now, we might reach the rendezvous before they regroup." Del nodded. "But once we leave this tunnel, we're exposed. One wrong move, and we're done." Mason looked to Isla. "Can May make it?" She nodded, though her face betrayed doubt. "We don't have a choice." Ray moved to the tunnel's far end, pried open the old hatch, and climbed up the metal ladder. The others followed, emerging in the ruins of a collapsed parking garage overlooking the overpass. The wind carried a sound, a distant engine. Del's eyes lit up. "Evac chopper." A black shape emerged on the horizon, barely visible through the smoky haze. It was low, fast, military. Outpost Echo had come. May's face lit up with hope. But before they could cheer, howls. Hundreds of them. From the rooftops. From the sewers. From the wreckage behind. The variant let out a shriek, and the horde charged again. Mason turned. "Run!" They bolted across the garage and down the ramp toward the overpass. The chopper hovered just ahead, side door open, a soldier waving them forward. Gunfire erupted from the helicopter, clearing a path. Ray and Del returned fire from the rear. Zeke limped forward, almost collapsing. Mason handed May to Isla and turned to cover them, just in time to see the variant leap from a rooftop. It landed between them. Ray fired 3 shots. The creature took the hits but didn't fall. It lunged. And Mason tackled it, both of them rolling into the rubble. "Mason!" Isla screamed. "Gio!" he shouted. "Get her out!" The last thing he saw was May reaching for him as the chopper's door slammed shut. Then the horde surrounded him. And Mason disappeared into the smoke. Mason didn't feel the pain at first, only the cold. The infected swarmed him like waves in a storm, claws and teeth tearing at his armor and arms. But somehow, he kept his grip on the variant's throat. It thrashed beneath him, a blur of muscle and hate. He smashed its head against broken asphalt once, twice, until its body went limp. Then blackness took him. When he opened his eyes, the silence was unnatural. Mason blinked slowly. His ears rang. The smoke had cleared, but the sky remained a dull gray, like a curtain drawn over the world. He lay in the wreckage of a collapsed overpass. Around him, bodies. Dozens. Infected, twisted, and broken, most likely taken out by the chopper's final barrage or the variant's own fury. But none of them moved. He was alive. Barely. His arm was broken. Blood ran down the side of his face. But somehow, no bite. No scratch that pierced skin. He sat up slowly, groaning. Still breathing. Then he heard it. Scraping. From beneath the rubble. Mason forced himself to stand, drawing a shard of rebar as a makeshift weapon. A figure crawled from under twisted concrete and pipes. It wasn't infected. It was human. A girl. No older than May. Her eyes were wide, sunken, skin pale but alive. She held a tattered teddy bear in one arm, her lip trembling. He lowered the rebar. "Hey, it's okay. You're safe now." She looked past him, toward the heap of bodies, and said nothing. "How long were you down there?" Mason asked, stepping carefully closer. Still no answer. But she pointed to something deeper in the rubble. A door. Metal. Reinforced. Mason's breath caught. An old bunker hatch. He limped to it, brushing aside debris. Faint light leaked from the edges. The door was ajar. Inside were voices. Human ones. 2 hours later, Mason sat in the dim glow of flickering lanterns, wrapped in a blanket, sipping the first clean water he'd tasted in days. The underground shelter was real, some kind of emergency fallback system built into the city before everything collapsed. Inside were 12 survivors. 8 adults. 4 kids. Including the girl. Her name was Lena. They'd survived nearly a year down here, using filtered rainwater and supplies from nearby buildings. The signal tower's explosion had shaken loose the ceiling, and exposed the entrance to the surface again. "You brought the swarm right over us," said a man named Griggs, a former firefighter with a scarred jaw and sharp eyes. "Could have gotten us all killed." "I didn't know anyone was here," Mason replied. "We were just trying to get one child out alive." "You did," Lena said quietly from the corner. Mason looked up. "May. You helped her get away," she said, hugging her bear. "She's my sister." Mason froze. "No, that's not possible." "She was living in the hospital alone with Isla for months." "She was taken from us," Lena whispered. "Last year. During a food run. My parents died trying to stop them." Mason leaned forward, piecing it together. "Isla must have found her after." Lena nodded. "She kept May safe. Told her stories. Gave her hope." Mason closed his eyes. May had called Isla her mother, but maybe it was never about blood. Maybe it was about safety. Family made in the ashes of the old world. "Outpost Echo," Mason muttered. "They'll be looking for me. I need to reach them." Griggs frowned. "And lead more infected right to our door?" "I can help you get out," Mason said. "The chopper took off, but they'll return. And if they don't, there are still other outposts. Places that are rebuilding." Griggs looked unconvinced. "And why would we trust you?" Lena stepped forward. "Because he saved my sister." Griggs relented with a grunt. "You want to go looking for a new extraction point, you'll need a team. And you'll need to move fast." Mason stood, shaky but resolved. "Then let's plan it." As the others prepped supplies, Lena approached Mason again. "She talked about you," she said. "May. On the radio, before you found her." Mason's eyebrows rose. "What did she say?" "She said she heard your voice once, in the static. Said it sounded like someone who wouldn't quit. Even if everything fell apart." Mason didn't respond right away. Because in that moment, he realized something. They'd gone on that mission thinking they were rescuing one child. But what they'd actually done was reignite a signal in the dark. Not just for May. For everyone still left. Miles away, high above a new dawn, the outpost Echo chopper circled. Inside, Ray sat beside Isla and May. Del manned the radio. "We're going back," Ray said. "He's still out there." Isla nodded. "I know." May looked up, eyes clear now. "Can we find him?" Del glanced back. "Not if we wait. Only if we act." May smiled faintly. "Then let's act." The city was dying. Its skyscrapers leaned like broken bones against the gray sky. Fires smoldered in old gutters. The air reeked of smoke, rust, and old blood. But inside the bunker beneath the rubble, Mason was moving with purpose. He zipped up a scavenged tactical vest, slipped a spare pistol into a side holster, and secured the radio pack to his back. His ribs ached. His arm burned with every movement. But none of it mattered. He had a plan. Beside him, Lena sat cross-legged, adjusting a map drawn crudely on paper scraps. "You're sure this is where they'll come back?" she asked, pointing to a spot near the riverbed, an old fuel depot, marked with faded red tape. Mason nodded. "Outpost Echo needs fuel for evac routes. If they're still flying, they'll land there. And if not, we'll send the signal again." Griggs approached, rifle slung over his shoulder. "We prepped what we could. 6 of us are going with you. The rest stay behind until the signal's confirmed. Once the chopper lands," Mason said, "you run like hell." Lena folded the map and slipped it into her pocket. "And what if it doesn't land?" Mason looked at her and smiled gently. "Then we make enough noise that the whole world hears us." 3 hours later, under heavy cloud cover, Mason's group moved through the ruined east sector. Streets were layered with ash. The silence was suffocating. No infected. No birds. Just the distant hum of wind scraping metal. "We're too exposed," Griggs muttered, eyes scanning rooftops. "Which means we're close," Mason replied. They reached the depot, a skeletal mess of rusted fuel tanks and twisted piping. In the center stood an old maintenance tower, half collapsed but tall enough to see over the sector. Mason climbed. His body screamed at every rung, but he pushed through. At the top, he opened the radio pack, connected it to the improvised antenna, and flipped the switch. A soft whine. Then static. "Come on." He adjusted the dial, found the emergency frequency, and spoke into the mic. "Echo base. This is Mason Cade." "Repeat, Mason Cade. Holding position at East Depot. Survivors confirmed. Extraction requested. Broadcasting now." Nothing. Then. A crackle. A faint voice. "Mason, you stubborn son of a. Hold your position. Echo 1 inbound." Mason nearly dropped the mic. He turned and shouted down the tower. "They're coming." Griggs whooped. The others smiled, disbelief giving way to hope. Then. A shriek. Followed by dozens more. The horde had arrived. From the shadows of the buildings, through alleyways and sewer grates, the infected poured in, led once again by the variant, its eyes locked on Mason. "We hold the line." Mason shouted. "Give Echo a reason to land." The survivors formed a half-circle around the tower. Griggs fired first, dropping 2 runners. The others followed. For every infected that fell, 3 more took its place. And the variant was still coming. Mason slid down the ladder, grabbed a flare, and ignited it, bright red smoke curling into the air. From above, the thump of rotor blades echoed through the sky. The chopper burst through the clouds, side guns blazing. Ray leaned out the open door, headset on. "Mason. Hold tight." Isla sat beside her, holding May close. The child stared down, searching desperately. "There," she screamed. "There he is." The chopper lowered, guns sweeping the field. Bodies fell. Dust blew into tornadoes. The variant roared and charged toward the tower. Mason met it halfway. They collided hard, rolling across the broken tarmac. Claws ripped into Mason's vest. He headbutted the thing and stabbed his knife into its throat. It didn't die easily. But it died. And when Mason stood, bloodied and shaking, the chopper was landing. Ray jumped out first, dragging Mason toward the ramp. Griggs covered them, firing until his rifle clicked empty. Inside, Isla reached out, eyes wet with relief. "You're alive." May ran into Mason's arms, hugging him fiercely. "You came back," she whispered. "I promised I would." One by one, the others boarded, Lena, Griggs, the rest of the team. Ray gave the signal, and the chopper lifted, climbing above the smoke and death. Below, the city shrank into shadows. But something had changed. A signal had been lit. Hope had moved. Hours later, on the edge of a fortified camp far from the city, survivors listened to a new broadcast. "Clear. Strong. This is Echo Base. We have confirmed survivor contact. Extraction routes reopening. If you can hear this, you are not alone." Inside the command tent, Isla and Mason stood by a map littered with pins and paths. "Where to next?" she asked. He looked down at May, asleep beside Lena on a bench. "Wherever there are still voices in the static," he said. "We find them. We bring them home."